I know for a fact that you have tried something in your life that you didn't click with at first. Put it down and forgot about it. Whether it be a game, movie, TV show, or whatever else you're really thinking of. Whatever that is, it wasn't working for you at the start, and you put it off and said that it isn't for you. Then, sometime down the road, you remember that piece of art, and you gave it another go. This time it clicked, and this time you love it. You can't put it down. That's how I was with Dark Souls. I first played Dark Souls 1 when I was roughly 13 years old. It was on my PS3 and I just heard how hard it was. I bought it used at GameStop, so I figured why the hell not. Back when GameStop was relevant, if you bought a used game, you had 7 days to play it. If you return the game within those 7 days, you can get a full refund, so I figured why not. And you want to know how far I got? I didn't even beat the Asylum Demon. I did get a trophy for lighting a bonfire flame. I was better than the 2.5% of players that didn't. Those other guys must have been worse than me. I don't even cringe at that fact. I was too young to understand it. I never would have clicked with Dark Souls 1. I, like most other kids at the time, loved Call of Duty. Dark Souls was such a drastic change that I wasn't able to accept it. Then in 2014, I was 15 years old. Around that time, I was playing a lot of fighting games. It's funny how an online 1v1 game that is supposed to be hard, I liked, but not Dark Souls. But in November of 2014, I played Dark Souls 2 on the PS3. And I did the same thing. I have 2 trophies on that game, and both of them are trophies that are super easy to get. I, again, didn't want to understand the game. Now we're in 2015. I'm 16 years old, and you'd think by that time I was somewhat functioning, and I guess I was, but not really. That was the year that Bloodborne came out, and I bought Bloodborne day 1, funnily enough. I had an online group of friends that I played with, and they were all going to get Bloodborne. So, as a 16-year-old that makes smart decisions, I bought the game without looking at any trailers or knowing that this was a Souls game. But since I was a bit older, I played the full game of this one. I didn't do any of the side areas because I didn't care to look up the guides, but I beat the game. I remember being stuck on Central Yarnum for a day and a half, and hey, for a new player, this part is really freaking hard. You don't have unlimited blood vials, and there are a large group of enemies. And that duo wolf bridge would fuck me every time. I didn't know you could chase the werewolves at the door, but even though I'd beat it, I still didn't get it. I went into the game with expectations that it was hard. And since I was a true gamer, I wanted to prove myself. I beat the game on April 5th and said out loud, "It's not hard enough." At the time, I remember being serious, at least I think I was. But I was also full of shit thinking back at it. I was stuck on Gurman for hours and hours. I had the hardest time killing him. But once I beat him, I went on to brag about my skills and not really thinking back at the game. I was still young at the time and highly addicted to Destiny. And the story isn't over. Trust me, it took way longer to get into these games. So next year, Dark Souls 3 came out. I still talked to the same group of friends and they were all getting Dark Souls 3. So I got Dark Souls 3 at launch. And the same story happened. I beat Dark Souls 3 and didn't like it. You have to understand that spending $60 for a game when you're young is tough. I would finish games I bought even if I didn't really like them. I remember having to summon online players for Soul of Cinder because I just couldn't beat them. It's funny how I hated Dark Souls 3 but now I have beaten the game at Soul Level 1. And then after Dark Souls 3, I didn't touch From's games for a while. I wrote them off as boring and essentially not Destiny or MKX at the time. But in 2018, I was 19 years old. I bought Dark Souls Remastered, and the click started here. I played Dark Souls 1, and yeah, I really loved it. For once, I didn't say I hated it, right? Since this was the first Souls game I loved, I didn't even care about the last half at the time. I had fun with the core gameplay loop, and this is where it started to come together. But sadly, I was left with a sour taste in my mouth. See, I don't really like to do New Game Plus in these games. I have already seen all the game has to offer, and I don't care to do it again until I replay the game a few years later. So why was I left with a sour taste in my mouth? I just said it wasn't the last half. Well, I was oblivious to the fact that killing Gwyn would forcefully opt me into New Game Plus. So I had to do a lot of the game again to get to the DLC. I liked the game a lot, but I didn't want to grind all the way back to the Duke's Archives just to kill the Blue Crystal NPC to actually start the DLC. So I was left with a mostly positive taste with Dark Souls 1. I am really happy that I had that experience because my next experience was Sekiro, and I fell back into the ways of not getting it. With Sekiro, I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I remember Genichiro was so tough that he gave me a headache in real life. I was bad at these games, and hey, maybe I am bad to this day. I loved Sekiro, but I still didn't finish this one. I fought my way all the way up until the decision that will decide where the game ends. I felt like being a dick to fictional NPCs and decided to choose the bad ending, and boy, I made a huge fucking mistake. I, for the life of me, couldn't beat Ishin and Emma. I was stuck on them for weeks and finally gave up. Somewhat similar with Dark Souls 1, I didn't feel like grinding all the way back up to that point, so I quit the game. Didn't even beat it. But that was the last time I would make that mistake. I made that mistake far too many times to make it again. So, in December of 2020, I woke up one day with the Souls itch. Oddly enough, I started playing Dark Souls 2, and yeah, I fell in love with it. I had previously beaten Dark Souls 2 a little after I beat Bloodborne. It was on sale for $10 and my buddies and I played through the game. I remember only having fun because we would play together, but I'm glad that I played it. So I started playing Dark Souls 2 and the games finally clicked. I ended up platinuming Dark Souls 2. That was a pain in the ass, by the way. And as soon as I was done with Dark Souls 2, I went on to platinum Bloodborne. I was having a blast playing all these games. And after Bloodborne, you guessed it, Dark Souls 3. I finally got these games, and I honestly think it was for the best. I remember having a ton of fun with Dark Souls 3 specifically, probably because the end of that game was such a high note. The end of Bloodborne was a Chalice dungeon, so you know how that goes. Dark Souls 3 is my second favorite Souls-style game to this day, and I won't forget my first time fighting Gale. Hearing his OST kick in during Phase 2 would give me chills down my spine hearing it. I didn't go back and beat Sekiro because I remember a lot of it at that time. I was saving it for later. Plus, going from Dark Souls 2, which was 60 FPS, and then Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, the 30 FPS was really noticeable, and I was just going to wait until I played it on my PS5 because they are 60 FPS there. Since a lot of the themes I brought up was not understanding these games, I still have that with these games, oddly enough. I don't think these will ever be fixed, but I still don't know a single thing about the lore of these games. Nothing at all. I don't know why my character is doing what they're doing. I don't know what the characters are. I don't know anything about the NPCs. Nothing at all. I do want to try the lore of these games though. I'm going to stick to that with Elden Ring's DLC. I will read more item descriptions and even watch some lore videos. I also don't do PvP, but I don't really think PvP is that large to begin with. Oh well. And to bring it back where the video started, there are still some games I want to try again that I just didn't vibe with at the start. I have been wanting to go back to Nier Automata for a while. I know that game's fanbase is very dedicated to the game. They are so adamant about the game being amazing that I even know the creative director, Yoko Taro. After I clicked with the Souls games, I started to learn a little bit more about creative directors behind games, and I would research them. I respect Yoko Taro, and of course I respect Miyazaki. But one other game I tried but didn't vibe with was The Outer Wilds. Same thing with Nier, I have heard that game was great too. And now we're at the end of the video, and I guess this is where it's going to get a little bit more personal. As you can tell, I am very new to YouTube. I only started this channel because I wanted to talk more about Miyazaki's games. I have some sort of fixation with these games, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. In some ways, these games are therapeutic for me. I know that these games are always dark and dreadful, but I feel comfortable in these games, kind of like I'm at home. Sometimes I have things on my mind, and I go on Elden Ring, roam around the open world, and just think. I also did that with Ghost of Tsushima when I was playing that. I mainly made this video because I have seen a few of these on YouTube before. I love hearing other people's stories of how they found these games. Sometimes I would also relate to what they were saying. If someone made a video about their love for Dark Souls, then it's usually more personal than about the game. I hope that you at least found a few things I said relatable, or maybe you simply play these games because you like them and that's where it ends for you. Regardless, thanks for getting to the end of the video.